What's up, everybody? It's your boy Montoya Smith, aka Black. Oh man, am I still live? I don't know if I might have messed up. All right, I think I hit the wrong button. I was hoping I'm still live. Okay, it says so. All right, I want to do some invites. All right, let me do these invites. Hope everybody's doing okay. For those that know, I'm suffering from COVID right now, but we'll get into that in a second. Let me just do some invites here. All right, so I'm just doing some invites real quick. Let's do 10 more. We'll get this thing started. I hope I'm still live. I almost went unlive, so I hope I didn't mess it up. All right, bear with me, y'all. Do some more invites. Just trying to check on y'all. I know people been checking on me. Thank you for all the people that's been checking up on me. Do really, really appreciate that. But today is y'all day. Community checkup. Y'all all right. Want to make sure we keep y'all posted on it. The access is a little different now, so I want to make sure I explain that for tonight's community checkup. Hope some of y'all come on and get with our therapists. I'm just doing some invites, trying to get y'all on. All right, cool. All right, y'all. Again, it's your boy Montoya Smith, aka Black Socrates. Community checkup, y'all all right? It's our once a month mental health checkup that we do once a month. Do it well, Tika. Talk about it in a split second here. Want to make sure everybody else all right with the community checkup tonight at 8:30 p.m. Our featured therapist is Dr. Katrina Pittman. Some of you may have heard about the community checkup, and this is maybe our sixth one. We've been doing it once a month, where we just do a community checkup and check the pulse of the community. Going through these COVID times, people have, we've lost some people, whether it be the suicide, depression, and things of that nature. And so we ended up starting an amazing event called Community Checkup, where we bring on doctor level therapists to just kind of kick in with the community and try to bridge the gap between some, people that might actually need therapy. We've been able to get a lot of people therapy, or some of the topics that we've done on the community checkup has definitely helped out those who have been a part of it. Had to change the format. You got to inbox me if you want to get on tonight, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, Dr. Katrina Pittman is our therapist for tonight's community mental health checkup, basically is what that is. And so that's tonight at 8:30. Please join us. And you don't have to be necessarily down to talk to a therapist about what therapy is like. People can use therapy, whether they're down, whether they're up, to maintain their performance. There's so many ways to use a therapist, and we'd like to do some dialogue. And so if you've been thinking about getting therapy, this is definitely the event to come on tonight, because we're going to do an in general discussion about therapy with Dr. Pittman. Find out if it's affordable, how to make it affordable, things of that nature. So it's a lot we can do with the community checkup. It's been serving us right. And then, of course, I wanted to give an update on myself, who, unfortunately, I was diagnosed, I tested positive, I guess is the best way to say it, for COVID-19 on Monday. And so I'm in isolation. So community checkup is going to do me mighty right tonight at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But just want to, let everybody know, if you're in the Atlanta area, we had to cancel our first live event since COVID of last year. We hadn't had an event since COVID shut us down in March of last year. We hadn't had a mental dialogue live experience, so we was going to do a mental dialogue Keep Black on Saturday, but gotta cancel it to further notice until I come out of isolation. Don't want to endanger any of the members here in the Atlanta area that can come out to our live events. So we will move that to sometime in April, but just let everybody know that I'm also doing okay. I just basically suffered mild symptoms, which 80% of those who get COVID recover mild symptoms to no symptoms. Some people are asymptomatic. So I fell, myself and a couple of my friends, we all hung out together. We all got it. So it makes sense. So it is what it is. But luckily, all of us have experienced mild symptoms. One of them I know has lost taste. I've been fortunate enough not to lose my taste during this. I would hate to have to spend this many days in the house eating food that I can't taste. So I've been fortunate on that part. But for me, it feels like a slight flu. So, a lot of people possibly have gotten it. There's not a lot of flu cases in the country right now. So you might have been like myself thinking you had the flu. I do with my being a part of the after school as an instructor for the after school program. I was getting my temperature checked all week, the first week, because I've had symptoms since the 15th. And my temperature wasn't high or anything like that. So that's one of the first indicators. That's why they take your temperature. But I didn't experience the high temperature. Out in the last few days I've had a slight temperature, 99 degree type temperature. So basically I went a whole week not knowing, again, just thinking I had like a little slight cold or flu or whatever, body chills, body aches, but not major, just slightly. So come to find out, I caught that thing. And then some people were asking about, knowing that I stepped up and got into the Novavax trial. So to give some details there, I'm in a trial. I was in a trial. I stepped up, just trying to, in a sense, help get this thing under wrap, man. And so I know people are afraid of the vaccine and things of that nature, but I was in a trial, which means 2/3 of the people in the trial will actually get the actual vaccine. 1/3 will be the control group. And when you enter a trial, they don't tell you which group you're in. And so, so some people were surprised to see that I come down with COVID because they assumed I, got the vaccine, but I didn't know one way or the other. And clearly with me getting it, I guess my guess now is that I'm in the actual control group that didn't get the vaccine. But, I've let the clinic know. And so I'll, probably hear from them soon or something to that degree. But either way, so got it. I'm okay. Again, I'm in that mild to no symptoms group. So hasn't, but the isolation obviously is to ensure nobody else gets it. So I got about 4 more days of isolation because you're supposed to isolate a minimum of 10 days from when your symptoms starts. And on the 10th day, if you have no symptoms, then you can end your isolation. If on the 10th day, which today is my 10th day, if you still have symptoms, which I do still have some minor symptoms, then you're supposed to extend that out to 14 days. So 4 more days stuck in the house. I think I'll be fine. But again, want to encourage y'all to become a part of tonight's mental health checkup. I could call it a community checkup. Y'all all right? Do that in conjunction with my man Sincere over at the Arts and Culture Show. We put that together just for everybody to get, just check on everybody. Dr. Katrina Pittman is our therapist tonight, so hopefully y'all will join us, spread the word. Just comment. Really, just if you can, DM me, because that's the way I can send out the link. Unfortunately, I've been putting the link up all over social media in the past, but unfortunately, last month we had somebody crash our community checkup. So now I'm sending out the links only to people that specifically asked for it. So hope it doesn't cut our numbers down. It might. It is what it is. But yeah, we couldn't go public because some people crashed the Zoom last month. We were able to get them off, but it wasn't easy. They were really interrupting what we were doing for about 10 minutes before we were able to get rid of them. And then we had an amazing discussion last month. We had Dr. J. Parker Griffin. Again, we bring on professional doctor level professionals for the community checkup once a month, typically last Thursdays of the month. And so tonight is tonight, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. If you would be interested in getting in and having a dialogue, I'm gonna say what you say. Oh no, not crash. Oh yeah, I shouldn't say crash. I actually said it wrong. You're right. I'm glad you. Actually, they just came in and they were being very disruptive. You know how Zoom was having that problem at one time, and so we had, I got the waiting room stuff, but because we opened up the community checkup to people wherever in the country, we mistakenly let some people in that we shouldn't have, and so they just. So with that said, we now send the link out to those who let us know they want to be a part of it. Whereas the last 5 months we were just letting people get the link off the social media. So that's what happened. Just got to do some protective measures. And so now it was just DM me and we will send you the information to get on tonight. The Zoom link to get on tonight via Zoom or whatever. We want to know who's getting on versus we were letting people in because we didn't obviously didn't know they would try to crash something like that. I keep using the word crash, but either way. So that's the main thing. They want to give everybody an update, and unfortunately, the cancellation of Saturday's Kick Black. And then, of course, since I'm on this video, got to highlight the Mental Dialogue Talk Show this Saturday. We're doing Society 2021. Canceling Disney characters, celebrating WAP. Where are we headed? Canceling Society 2021. Canceling Disney characters, celebrating WAP. Where are we headed? Should be a pretty dope cultural discussion. Just kind of figure out what the heck is going on out here. Kind of probably a week removed from when that was the hot topic. Pepe Le Pew getting canceled. I think some Dr. Seuss books are getting canceled and things of that nature. And then we got at the Grammys. I just not saw the performance. I don't watch TV. So while it's going to be a great discussion, I got to admit that WAP performance was pretty impressive. They did their damn thing. But either way, we got that on primetime TV and getting rid of Pepe Le Pew. So on Saturday, please tune in to the Mental Dialogue Talk Show right here on my Facebook page. I always keep it running live on Saturday mornings, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday mornings. You can go to Blog Talk Radio and subscribe to Mental Dialogue, and you'll get email updates for all of our shows when we go live. You can always listen to them later on all the streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, so you can definitely catch old shows. But if you want to catch it live with us on Saturday morning, call in and give us your 3 cents on this Saturday's discussion question, which is Society 2021. Canceling Disney characters, celebrating WAP. Where are we headed? That is Saturday show. So feeling good, Damon. Feeling all right. Just lethargic. I've been having mild symptoms the entire time, for the most part. I had a couple of nights where the chills was pretty bad, but I just get on the covers and be just fine. So it just felt like a slight flu. Like I was saying a little earlier, I went about a week thinking I just had the flu, and then one of my friends who had tested positive that I hung out with on the 12th called me on Monday and said he had it. And so a couple of friends I hung out with, we all got it. So a friend came into town who was lackadaisical and paid the price. Don't tape it one time. Yep, don't tape it one time. Because, for the most part, because I do after school program, my routine is about the same. Got to wear masks at the school, of course. And so, for the most part, been able to avoid it. But the one time that hung out with about 5 people, eating food, no mask, and 3 days later, I'm stuck with COVID. So, don't take but one time being lackadaisical, and that's the risk. But like I said, for the most part, I'm definitely I live alone, so I stay in the house and wear a mask. That's my thing. So, but the one time I didn't, I walked away with it. But luckily, like I said, I'm in that 80% that typically suffers mild to no symptoms. I'm glad not to be in that 19% who, when their body fights COVID, it causes other issues and sometimes left with some type of permanent issue other than what COVID caused. Got someone that worked at the school, unfortunately, is in the hospital due to COVID, and during that time has actually suffered a heart attack. And that's the stuff that nobody ever talks about when it comes to this virus. They don't talk about the collateral damage. Everybody talks about the 99% that recover, but not really and say it's only 1% that die, but 500,000 is a lot of people, but whatever, you know what I'm saying? But it ain't just the deaths. For every one death, 3 people when they're fighting it, it invokes a stroke in them. Like I said, just this other lady got it the same time I got it. They were already treating her, and she recently suffered a heart attack. There's another lady got out of the hospital and a few days later suffered a heart attack. Like the way this virus attacks the body, you just never know if you're going to be in that 19% that may be left with some type of permanent issue due to your body's fight of COVID. And so for those that know, I'm a long time advocate for the vaccine, and or if you just jumped in, and as I explained earlier, I was in a vaccine trial, so I'm assuming now that I got it, it's probably pretty clear I was in the placebo control group, but they don't tell you that when you enter the trial. Novavax has applied for emergency use. If they get that approval, that's when they're technically will tell us whether we got the real one or not, and if not, then you can come get the actual vaccine. So that's my situation for those because I have definitely friends that thought I was already vaccinated, and again, I didn't know because I was either in the 2/3 that do get vaccinated or the 1/3 that is the control group. So more likely, since I got it, I may be in the third, I may be in that control group. Also, I mean, here's the realistic possibility of just understanding how efficacy could work, because I don't know, Novavax is still in their trial stage, so there's no public numbers out like we know about Pfizer and Moderna, how the efficacy they have, and Johnson, because they've already passed the trial stage, so we have that information. So I might actually have the vaccine, and maybe the reason my symptoms are so mild is due to having the vaccine. So it could be, I could have it or I could not have it, but Novavax hasn't finished their trials and published them or whatever to know what their efficacy is and things of that nature. So like I said, my guess now is, since I ended up with it, is I probably was in that control group that did not get the actual vaccine. That's my assumption at this point. But whenever I find out if I actually got it or not, I'll bring that information to the table. Again, just being a big advocate for the vaccine over the past year, just simply recognizing, we've lost 60,000 black people, and that's not a number to shake a stick at. And people, don't put that in. It says, yeah, good info. I think eventually we will all have to take it, like it or not. Yeah, well, the way it's going to work, because of just the way it's being offered, you will have industries, any industry, like I'm in the education system, right? And so industries, that's how we get vaccines right now. I always acknowledge, I always try to make sure I say this for people who haven't been seeing the previous videos, and some people assume that I'm not completely understanding of where our fear specifically as African Americans comes from when it comes to, getting this vaccine. I am very aware of the history of this country. And so I like to try to qualify that, being an advocate of the vaccine, as though I'm not dismissing that at all. But Damon, what I really want to say in reference to, just mention the idea that we're about to take it, like it or not, it's really going to be more predicated to your industry. Like right now, like for the, like whether we recognize it or not, most of us are vaccinated. If you, if you're in the most recent generations and stuff like that, they get 16 different vaccinations over the course of 18 years. And if you end up going to college, you're gonna, and if you live in a dorm, you're gonna be required to get another one because I think the meningitis one or something like that. And so I say I'm explaining that detail. These are all vaccines we've been taking, forgot about, and most of them happen when we're real young, so we don't really think about them or whatever. But yeah, most of us are vaccinated. But I'm using the one for the college one based on if you live in a dorm, you're required to get this. I think it's meningitis vaccine or whatever. And so I'm saying that to say about COVID, like people keep talking about forced to get it. I don't think that's what you're saying, Damon, but I like to be real clear here and help people understand. Your industry probably will determine it, and it's based on if your industry is one in which you congregate. Me being in education, clearly the school systems will require it. The passport. Here's the thing, but people don't. Here's something I'd like to give a perspective on it. Absolutely. But we say I don't like to say it's coming down the pipeline, but again, it's just because of my perspective on it, right? As an advocate. So what happens is, in my mind, I just say it like it's a common sense thing from this standpoint. And this is what I love to say about the passports. Again, I've obviously been advocating for this thing because it's just a real thing. You just look at the science. But with that said, like the idea of traveling to other countries, people just literally should just understand those countries are not letting you come to them. That's their rules. You know what I mean? So that's not even like I get that there's this distrust of the government or whatever, but I just like to be real specific about, like, the government hasn't made anything mandatory. and they're probably not going to, but your industry, if they know that you congregate, because the science is what it is, and this thing does, like I said, me and my friends, we hung up for a few hours on the 12th. After 3 out of 5 of us got it, or whatever. Had a friend come into town, didn't mask up, assuming that's the moment, because my routine other than that is pretty, pretty standard. And yeah. I mean, like, and I was like, the reason I like to point out the passport one is other countries don't want you coming to them. So, like, to me, I like to point that out because that lets you know how, in a sense, serious this thing is, and that ain't got nothing to do with our government. So where I understand people's fear of our government or whatever government vaccines, even though, again, we don't know. A lot of us, unless you, 90% of Americans get vaccinated on that series, on the vaccination series, which takes place, ends up being like 70 shots over 18 years, but most of them are done by the time we're 4. Most of the shots. So we don't even remember most of the vaccine shots that we got. So, you know what I mean? But, it is what it is. And, now me specifically, because I'm in a trial, I can't actually go get the vaccine. But again, I just was, for people that saw my videos in the past, when I was telling them that I was entering the Novavax trial, like Pfizer and Moderna hadn't quite been approved at that moment. I was trying to get into the Pfizer trial and got bumped out. And I say all this to kind of say that, as I said then, being an advocate, I didn't want to be telling everybody else, and I'm not even, stepping up and doing it. So that was what that was. But now, the reality for me is, since I'm in a trial, I can't go get the Pfizer or Moderna because I have to finish this trial out. But the reality is, now that I've had it, and like I say again, I'm in that luckily in that 80% with mild to no symptoms. Now I will have some levels of natural immunity. And, the reality is typically natural immunity is going to be stronger than vaccine immunity. That's pretty much the case with most viruses. They're trying to figure this one out because, unfortunately, I know of 2 people that have gotten it twice. And so they are seeing reinfections. They're obviously trying to figure out if it's the variants or, you know what I mean? But every virus works different. This is the new, it's a novel virus, specifically SARS-CoV-2. This is the second one of these. I had one in 2003. So the technology that they're using for the vaccination, they had already started working on it. During the one, whatever one caused the SARS-CoV-1, which was in 2003, they were already trying to advance getting the vaccine for it then. So when this one popped up, they were ready to go, and they had an open checkbook. So I always like to clarify, a lot of the skepticism is warranted. I just ask that when you have the skepticism, that you go the next step and get some evidence for why you make your final decision. Because you damn right, we should be skeptical of any damn thing. Like, we definitely know that's the history. I don't knock any of our people for being skeptical. I just hate that a lot of people are stopping at the question. When they say, why was, like, for example, why was this so short? And so that question itself can create a level of fear. Again, that's a very fair question. How did they develop this one so quickly? Great question, but you don't allow your skepticism to stop you at the question. There's an answer. And then, go look up the answer. And the answer actually makes sense. I'm not a good, again, I'm just dialoguing, keeping you the COVID updates. If anybody, want to ask questions, I definitely answer questions. Again, I've been an advocate, for the vaccine. I just had a disheartening story. Now that I have it, everybody's been calling me, just hearing this one senior, she's not willing to get it. Her daughter's in the field begging her to get it. And I'm just like, man, I really, like I said, somebody being skeptical and choosing not to get it, that I can understand. The part I really detest is there's these anti-vaxxers who intentionally put out misinformation. And I know that that's what's led to the fear for these seniors who, highly likely could fall into that 19% that could have other issues while fighting COVID. It makes them be hospitalized. Like, nobody, if you think about 500,000 deaths, but three to one on strokes. That's a 1,000,005 strokes that people have had this year that in 1 year that they wouldn't have had. Like, it's a lot of collateral damage. Or I heard about a marathon runner who can't run right now because one of the biggest things that it does, which is actually one of the minor things compared to causing a stroke, or as I always tell y'all, Scarface now is on dialysis after having COVID. It just sometimes it just kicks off other issues that become collateral damage due to your body fighting it. But the biggest issue, the one that happens the most, is decreasing your lung capacity. So some people never return. So like that marathon runner, she can't even jog right now. Like her lung capacity, and unfortunately, if you're in that 19% that suffers some way, let me see what Damon says. I hear many speaking of fear on both sides. Many years. Well, Damon, to be honest with you, the scientists are not using any fear. The science if you just go look at the science, they're going to tell you what's good with it, what's wrong with it. Oh, we had to stop this batch over here because it caused this many issues. So, if you're going to, both sides, if you're talking about it being politicized, we shouldn't be getting no information from them any damn way. But the science, they ain't pushing no fear. The science says, for example, like why we know that the Moderna and Pfizer, for example, there's a new variant 117 or something, right? So they already done tests to say, okay, this vaccine, even though it was developed prior to that variant, they're doing tests to say, okay, it's still effective on that. But there's like a variant in South Africa. There's other variants. This is just the ones I looked up. I know there's been others since I looked it up. This has been about a month ago information I'm giving you now. This is an ongoing thing, so I'm pretty sure there's variants I don't know about at this point, for example. But the variant 357, it ain't responding to the antibodies. So basically, the vaccines are useless against it, at least at the moment, at the time. And so I'm saying all this to say, the science ain't presenting no fear. The science, you go just look at the science and say, oh no, it worked on this one and it don't work on this one. That's just presenting the information. That's why I love the science side of it. The science is just gonna say, here's what's good, here's what's not. What's that? It's one vaccine in another country. I keep forgetting the name of it. It starts with an A. But they stopped it for a second because they thought it was related to these blood clots. So it got stopped. And then I'm saying all this to say is the reason I know this because science told you this. So science said, hey, we got an issue. Then now it just got pushed back again, saying they've already figured out that it's not the cause of these blood clots. But while they didn't know, science didn't know, it got pulled. Once they figured it out, they pushed it again. That happened in California earlier this year. There was a specific batch, about 300,000 dosages. He said that's another thing, as you said, it's an ongoing. Right, that's all science can do. But I mean that, you're right, yeah, I just like to put that in perspective. It is a new virus. And science will keep reporting as it gets more data points. So this, I get how this partly created fear in the beginning a year ago, and it definitely didn't help with the politics getting involved. So because of how politics got involved from the beginning, versus, in my opinion, in a way that they shouldn't have gotten involved, this wasn't a thing to have what is it called? Bipartisan? Like this is a worldwide pandemic. Why were there ever two sides on a virus? So if we just approached it from the scientific approach, then there wouldn't have been the confusion of, because you're absolutely, AstraZeneca. AstraZeneca. Yep, that's it, Pete. But let me kind of delve into how politics messed up how science was handling this from the beginning. So since politics got involved and, we took the initial, especially in our country, unfortunately, we took the initial approach, this thing ain't that serious. And so what happened was, when science was still, getting data points of who actually has it, didn't have a lot of data points. So science would get some data points and say, all right, here's a theory right now. And then they get more data points and they're like, okay, here's a theory right now. Well, because it had been politicized, people start turning into the science don't know what they're doing. When all the scientists really was saying, well, at this point, this is what we think we know. Then they would get more data points. And science will openly put out, okay, this is what we think we know now. So science is putting this out the whole time. And I said this, that had it not been politicized, then people would have understood why the information was changing as they got more data points. But because it got politicized into this is a real thing or this is not a real thing, so then it made the scientists, as they improved their data points, it made them look like they didn't know what they was doing. And it's not that the scientists didn't guess wrong, but they're with the whole time they were saying we're still learning about the virus, we're guessing. Like they're saying that as well because it was new. Now a year later, we got these protocols. Exactly, Pete. Science is evidence, not consensus. Y'all don't understand what you mean by another problem for a different time. I mean, I think the only reason we got this skepticism is because of the politics. So that's why I brought it in. Because, again, I just disagree with the concept that, in a sense, both sides push fear. The scientists are just saying, here's what we know. And now they know more. So they just keep saying, here's what we know. Work against this variant, doesn't work against this variant. Like, if it ain't working, science will gladly tell you that it's not working, or if it is working, but if you're just skeptical and only ask questions and never go look at the information, the assumption is that both sides are pushing fear. Scientists have been saying from day one, this is no, that's been the new directive, the 3 feet thing or whatever. And so, if that's what I saw that with the schools, like they've come up with that or whatever. And so, if you understand how science works, whatever studies they got that now make that cool, they got some research that lets them know that that is now cool. And I'm pretty sure it's probably based on, I'm just making a guess here as much. I mean, I spent the first year doing a lot of research and seeing what the science has said. I haven't looked up this research. I saw that new directive, Damon. But I'm gonna give a guess here. But my guess is this is probably got a lot to do with this being kids, and obviously most of them are asymptomatic. So again, they can still be spreaders and things of that nature. But it's not like the children are necessarily experiencing COVID. Like right now, I think the trials for the youth are at the lowest right now is at age 13. I think they're just now doing clinical trials from ages 13 to 16 because all the current Moderna and Pfizer and Johnson are 16 and up. Right, but if Damon, think about what you're saying. So the only, what you just said about the AIDS being transmitted kissing, that if you were, I'm in Dallas, I lost a family member to the AIDS epidemic and have, another member, with it. During the time it was the epidemic when it was, kind of being discovered and things of that nature. So you're saying science keeps changing, but again, it's not under the concept of what science does. So when it first came out and they were trying to figure out exactly what AIDS does, when they didn't know, they just knew that it was transmitted through body fluids. And so until they tested it, they said kissing. And then when they did the test, they was like, oh, it's just sexual intercourse. So science always lays out broad because they had figured out it's transmitted through body fluids and because they had found that it was in saliva, right? Like they could find the virus in saliva. So when they first figured that out, the first thing they're going to put out is, okay, these interactions are an issue. As they tested it, they was like, can't pass it kissing. Like science is supposed to keep changing. As science finds evidence, it tells you the new evidence. Like that's what you want science to do. You don't want science to like they'll tell you when I hope that makes sense. Like that's what science, I was like I've done videos on this. Science loves to correct itself. And that's a good thing. Just understanding methodology. They kind of have to, think about it. Let's think about the AIDS when it, obviously, because it took, just give you, I studied it because I had family members go through it, so I studied this. So just give I'm gonna give a little backdrop on this, Damon. So they were, as they did a bunch more studies, they realized they were kind of 8 years behind on, AIDS had been with us before scientists really knew. And a big part of that was, because HIV turns into AIDS, and then you end up dying of something else due to how it attacks your immune, your ability to fight off with the white blood cells, right? And so it was easy not to be discovered because you were dying of the things of you not having a blood count. They didn't realize it was AIDS that was causing you not to have the white blood cell counts. So anyway, but yeah, basically throw a wide net, but the wide net is still based on something. So when AIDS is first discovered, for example, and they find it in human saliva. So at that point, they're like, okay, we found it in human saliva. And so intercourse is being questioned. All forms of intercourse are being questioned. But the kissing one was cut out pretty quickly. I remember that. I remember that the kissing ended up being pushed more by humans than the scientific community. I remember going to do the research on that even then, and the science community was pretty much putting, we don't know yet, but we do know that it's found in saliva. And then once they did the studies, they found like it wasn't enough to transfer actual AIDS, and that's why they don't rule out kissing. But they had to do the studies before they could prove that. So the science was really more in the I don't know stage, because obviously we were super alarmed by the fact that now, obviously venereal diseases have been around, but we're talking about one that would kill you now, that you don't ever get rid of. Yeah, I still think the perspective is wrong, Damon. Like, if you understand scientific methodology, like nobody, like science is only going to tell you what it can prove. So I don't get like what's problematic. Like, I'm gonna tell you, I'm okay. I got people for me, people that treat it as problematic, in my opinion, is due to treating science like a belief. Like, people with our beliefs, we believe them. We think we're right. People think we're wrong. But our beliefs don't have a methodology to prove them. Science does not operate off of whether we believe something or not. They come up with theories and try to prove them. If science is always in the I don't know stage, how can we trust it? Okay, so let me see, maybe I'm not being clear here. Science is not always in the I don't know stage. Science is always using their testing methodology. So when science knows something, it tells you. When a new virus hits and there's not a lot of data points, science says, here's what we think we know now. And the reason they say think, because science is aware of when there's a brand new virus and they don't have a lot of data points, they're taking guesses with a very few data points. But science typically thinks over time, as it gets more data points, they will find more evidence. So, I would just say, maybe go back and just kind of understand scientific methodology. And what I'm saying there is, the trust is in the methodology. That doesn't mean that a human can't mess up. But the beautiful thing about being in our information age is you can like, for example, I just saw this a couple of weeks ago. Not even a couple of weeks ago, about a little over a week ago. Like the Danish just finished a study on, the vaccine and autism. I thought that was dead, but I guess they still studied it. They did 100,000 people, try to connect the vaccines to the autism, for example. And so the methodology is gonna, cause what happens is, like, for example, So let's say both of us, you and me, Damon, are scientists, right? Okay. So you use the methodology to correct. We're trying to study the same thing. Use the methodology correct. Say I use the methodology two ways. I can use it incorrectly, or I can intentionally do something, right? So either way, so I make a mistake or I intentionally do something. So obviously we're going to come to a different conclusion. Well, so whatever it is that we're studying, well, what happens is if it's some type of new advancement, before the science community will accept it, our information was going to have to be peer reviewed by somebody other than us. And now these peer reviews take place in other countries. Historically it didn't, but now we're in a global world, and like they have, like, the science community now has computers where, like, for example, the coronavirus, it was sequenced the same day that Wuhan put it out, because they found out they got a computer where they put it up the same day. So the guy Graham, who developed the Moderna one, he got the sequence the same day the guys in China put out, we got a new virus. Like, these are technology advances we didn't have. But anyway, back to my example, Damon. So you do methodology on whatever we're studying. You do it correctly. Say I do it incorrectly, or let's say I'm nefarious and I do something intentionally wrong. And so obviously we would come to two different conclusions. So we would have back and forth in the scientific world about what you think you're right on your method, what you're coming up with. And I would say, no, I'll tell you what I come up with comes up opposite. Well, the peer review due to methodology is going to be the one who determines which one of us is right. So even though I did something intentionally wrong, the peer review would be others who would have to, because you have to duplicate in order to say something. Before science will accept something as a real theory, it has to be duplicated. So since I did something intentional, and although I'm pushing a narrative, if my peers can't authenticate and duplicate that, my theory will go to waste, and yours, done correctly, will be the theory that wins out in that dialogue. Now, when you get into the politics and science, if I got a whole bunch of people backing me, or my country's strong or whatever, like, they may put their money behind my BS theory and market that theory. But the science world will know that's a bullshit theory because the methodology don't hold up. That's what I'm talking about. The scientific methodology is what you trust. According to what you're saying, if you're relying on the methodology, we don't know if something may be wrong with the vaccine years down the line, right? So, it's a new vaccine, so you can't have long term. You can't know the long term effects until you have had time to study it in the long term. However, you do have the amazing history of vaccines that are not problematic whatsoever. And so, of all medicines, vaccines are the safest medicines that we offer. It doesn't mean that you can't have side effects or that vaccines don't cause injuries. I like to be real clear. But what I mean by safest is, vaccine medicines, then you have antiviral medicines, remedies, right? And so what happens is all medicines will have a profile, and the side effects profiles are always the lowest on vaccines in comparison to, for example, aspirin. Like, for example, aspirin, unfortunately, 6,000 people will die from aspirin every year. For example, I'm just using it as an example. Severe vaccine injuries happen at 1 in 1 million. 1 in 1 million. That's severe injuries. Vaccine deaths are highly. Anyway, I say all this to say that when you say years down the line, the measles vaccine that we get has been out since 1963. The polio vaccine that we get has been out since the 50s. So we got a long-term history on all these other vaccines. So, this vaccine coming online and having a bad long-term effect probably is not going to be the case now that we have more history and more technology on how to efficiently and smartly develop medicines. And then the other thing is, this is what people with those fears. Can't nobody who's even the anti-vaxxers who push the misinformation, anytime I ask them, is the vaccine worse than the virus? They always have to answer no. They always have to answer no. Like, it's not even close. I mean, if I tell you about the vaccine course, that people talk about or whatever, and they do pay out a lot of money for certain injuries. All kind of injuries can go to them. They pay out a lot of they pay out a lot of money, but they average about 700 cases a year. That's for vaccine injuries that people will get paid out for. Because again, hardly any medicine doesn't have no side effects. But what happens with all medicine, it just becomes a risk versus reward proposition. And the situation with this virus is it's not even close. I mean, this virus is killing us, black people specifically, at about 1 in 1,100. It's killing whites at about 1 in 2,100. So we're dying at double the rate. And as I said earlier, don't focus on just the deaths. Think about all the collateral damage. And vaccines adverse effects happen at severe, I should say. I'm going to get that clarified. Vaccine injuries can be recorded because anything will be counted, like a rash or anything like that. So if I count all injuries, I've seen data at 1 in 5,000. So it's still become, and that's for an injury, not a death. So you got a virus that'll kill you at 1 in 1,100, and if you get a rash from those vaccine shot, it'll still be counted as a adverse event. And so, those typically happen on average at 1 in 5,000 again. So we want to compare something that kills you at 1 in 1,000 or something that might give you a minor injury at 1 in 5,000. Severe injuries, there is testing out at 1 in 1 million. And, again, even giving more research, all right, let's see. I heard there wasn't any payout for vaccine injuries when it comes to this vaccine. It might not be, because, and then what happens, you might be right about that. I'll give you my guess on more likely what that is. If you understand why the vaccine court was even brought to fruition. And it was just, it was basically, there was such a run on these cases that they just had to do something to make sure the industry was maintained, because vaccines have, like I said, been good for us or whatever. And then, and then I'm trying to give a little history and give my guess for why that might be the case with this vaccine. It makes sense to me, but I'll explain it. So if you understand why the vaccine court was actually put in place, basically, a lot of people don't realize this. So there's a lot of, like everybody says, there's a lot of money being made on this vaccine, which is true. It's definitely money going to be made when they need when they pretty much saying the whole world need one, and so that's the biggest market you can have. So that's why all these different companies are creating these vaccines, right? But typically, vaccines ain't big business compared to the rest of the pharmaceutical industry. It's about 3% of this like $190 trillion business. Vaccines are actually a low end number. It's consistent money, but it ain't the big money. And so when they had this run on now pretty much a lot of it stemmed from the autism one, right? So when they had this run on the companies were like, well, why would we be in the business? And the government's obviously wanting to make sure, had so much success with vaccinations in the country or whatever. So the government wanting those companies to keep producing them. They was like, well, dang, if we put these companies out of business with these BS cases, then these companies won't make us vaccines. So the government said, all right, we'll take it and or whatever. So that's kind of how it got started or whatever. So with that said, more than likely for obviously because of a pandemic, and there's now finna be everybody has to have it. So you're going to have, not have to have it, but you know what I mean? They want everybody to get it. And so now, we up to 110 million dosages or something. So, this is all, whereas normally our babies get them on their schedule at their time. But right now they're saying, hey, public, everybody get a vaccine, if you will. So, if we're up to 110 million dosages, and vaccines do have adverse effects, hardly nothing foreign in your body will have no side effects for everybody. Some people can experience medicines with no side effects. Some people don't. So the reality is, since we're giving it to everybody right now and there will be adverse effects, it makes sense that they would put a stay, that you can't just turn around and start suing because you got a rash. Because right now we need everybody to get it, and the rash is still better than the symptom that you would get if you got that if you end up falling in that 19% and get the actual virus. So it just makes sense that it's just it's just a smart, because now, especially with the fears that are out there now, people would just try to come up with anything and say, oh, the vaccine caused this. And I'll tell you even more, something else that the vaccine court does that most people don't know about. And this is definitely the reason they probably made this rule for this brand new vaccine. So the vaccine court in America is the only court in America where you, as the complainant, am I saying it right? Complainant, what's the plaintiff? I'm sorry. Damn, that was a pretty weird. Where you go into the court, it is already presumed that the vaccine caused what you said. So it's not the typical burden of proof that every other legal court has in this country. You know, and there's different levels, right? The criminal court, the presumption of innocence, right? The civil court, most civil courts are preponderance of evidence. Well, the vaccine court specifically, it is presumed the vaccine caused whatever you said it caused. So it's kind of a hustle, and the government just pays them out as long as you're willing to keep bringing the case. And here's what happened. Here's another thing. I know this gonna sound crazy, but you can go look up everything I'm telling you. When you bring the court case, the court pay for everything. Your lawyers, everything. So you get everything paid for, and it's already presumed that the vaccine did it. That's why they pay out so much money. They pay out a lot of money. They like, I mean, big money on those. You know, they average about 700 cases a year. So just giving people the facts. I mean, and like I said, when it comes to the science of it, the science say, oh, this is what's good, this is what's bad. Like if you actually go look into the science don't tell you one side or the other. It tell you all the information, and now you can make a good informed decision. Let me see what else I got. I just received the first. Right, exactly, Damon. Good point. Let me see what my man Pete said. I just received the first shot of Pfizer on 23rd March. I'm a high-risk group for COVID. It's very good. You're getting it. For me, the virus is more severe than the vaccine. For everybody. Like, even if you're in the age, like me, I'm suffering mild. So even more so for you to do it, Pete, because of, like you said, knowing that you're in a high-risk group. And you said, for me, the virus is more severe than the vaccine. The reality is, you know what I'm saying, again, side effects do happen. So what I'm saying, like I like to put this in real perspective. So as I said earlier, while vaccine medicines typically have a safer profile than all other medicines, every medicine can carry side effects. So yeah, if you end up being someone who suffers hopefully a minimum side effect, but some people suffer severe side effects. So for somebody that actually suffers a severe side effect, they might be like, man, I'd rather have gotten COVID. But that's a rarity. And two, rather getting COVID is hoping that you're not in the 19% or hoping you're obviously in the 1%. Like you say that, you know what I'm saying? And so, so the only people to me that can, because there are people in the world who unfortunately have had issues with vaccines. If you're in one of those that have had the adverse effect, then I absolutely understand why you might be like, I don't ever want a vaccine. That makes sense when you've had that relative experience. I respect that 100%. But for the most part, most adverse effects from vaccines you can recover from. But good point, Damon. Like you said, he said I got that. If I just went for my physical and got a bruise from drawing blood, the normal person wouldn't sue for that, right? It's something more drastic. Yeah, it's just a risk versus reward, and in this situation, there's nothing. I mean, I'll be giving people giving people other numbers, like 60,000 blacks dying in a year, right? Like a lot of, like, Damon, you my age, so we grew up, we always talk about the crack era, that kind of stuff, right? And how high the murder rate was during the crack era. A terrible year was 10,000 murders. This virus killed 60,000 blacks in 1 year. Like, this virus is six times the killer of the crack era murders. But if you have no context and people are hyper focused on only what's wrong with the vaccine, because if all you ever hear is what's wrong with it, and you already have an assumption that it could be worse than the virus, then every time you hear something wrong, you're gonna overplay that without comparing it to information that you can look up to be like, okay, you know what I mean? Because I'm not saying, there are going to be some adverse effects that can happen. You know what I mean? But the anti-vaxxers, what they do is they overplay the bad situations to push that fear. The scientists don't do that the other way. The scientists say, oh, no problems with this one or problems with this one. Like I always keep going back to the California situation earlier this year, where that was one of the batches that got stopped. The epidemiologist of the state, she stopped that particular batch. But while she was stopping that batch, she said all other vaccinations continue. This was in California. I remember one of my friends who gets vaccine. When he introduced it to me, he only told me about the 300,000 that got stopped. I didn't say nothing at the time because I hadn't researched it, but I knew it had gotten stopped. But when I looked at it, I says, well, why didn't he tell us that she also said all the rest of the vaccinations in the state go ahead? Because scientists is just going to give you all the information. We're seeing more problems with this batch, so we're stopping it. The rest of them are fine. But the anti-vaxxer is only going to tell you, hey, they stopped 300,000 doses. Don't tell you that they're letting the rest of them go, which is way more than 300,000 doses. See, the scientists tell you, the scientific information just says, here's what's working, here's what's not. We keep studying it. If they because like I said, there's nobody can give you the long term until there's long term. And here's what science will do in the event that something ends up being an issue in the long term, let's say with this particular vaccine. This is what I am confident in about the methodology of science and how they study it. And what I'm confident is once there's been time to continue to see any results, from the vaccine and things of that nature, if there's methodology discovers something, what they typically do is they will make the vaccine more efficient. What is it? Thimerosal has been taken out of all the vaccines except for the flu. Like that gets done because science loves to correct itself. Oh, we found a better way to do it. This caused this. This caused this. They keep doing methodology, keep doing testing, and keep improving. That's the methodology that I'm trusting. So, hope that makes sense. Yeah. So, but here it is. When you say they're pushing it, so for example, if this had not been politicized at all, and again, in our entire lives, all of us are damn near vaccinated. 90% of Americans are vaccinated. Had this not been politicized, of course they're pushing it because the virus is killing us. Like pushing it when vaccines have a great history for us, that's what you would want your country to do in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, China's created their own vaccine. India's created their own vaccine. This is a pandemic. Of course, we got it because the pushing it is this. Because, everybody keeps talking about it's going to be mandatory. It's going to be mandatory. No, the pushing it since it ain't mandatory is come get it. Come get it. We're making these batches. Plus, we're talking about a vaccine that only has a certain shelf life. And all these vaccines are slightly different. Moderna has to be held at 90 degrees below, and Pfizer has to be held at 5 degrees below, and Fahrenheit, and Johnson can be at refrigerator temperature. So all these things play a role. Like, nah, bruh. Like, this science is on one side of this. Now, you're not an apologist if you got the science that says, here's what's available. How are you an apologist? Like, there's no negating the science. But it seems that way because people are saying there are two sides. No, there's one side lying without science and one side with the science. And the science tells you what's good and bad when you go look at all of it. Say, oh, it's working here, it ain't working here. Oh, we thought it did this, now we got some new data points and it do this. Science works one way all the time. There is no apologist when the science is on this side. The anti-vaxxers have no science on their side. Not just being facts. If you come out science, because science ain't beliefs. We can prove it or we can't, and if we can't prove it, we don't say it. Like I was on a broadcast on Monday, And the guy that was, against it said, this vaccine is not even offering immunity or whatever. Which right now, science, the Pfizer and the Moderna one guarantees against hospitalization and death. They rolled it out and didn't have the info on whether it was going to stop transmission. So science, if you go look at the science, openly says, we don't know that yet. Like, that ain't no, because they don't have the evidence to tell you that. Now, the anti-vaxxer jumps on it, like, it ain't even stopping immunity. I had a guy on the broadcast say, so why would I even get it if it ain't stopping transmission? Like, that's pinpointing the information. Everything I'm telling you is, I could go look at, and science told me, we know we can stop this. We don't have a study showing whether we can stop transmission yet. Now, there was a study came out on the 18th out of Israel, showing that, I don't know which vaccine they studied, but the transmission seems to be slowing down. New study. What is science doing right now? Doing more studies to figure out, is it helping with transmissions? Since they didn't know by the time these particular, especially the ones in America, got rolled out. And science openly told you, we're not saying it's stopping transmission, but we know it'll keep you from dying. Because you know why they have to tell it to you like that, Damon? It's because they have to have the evidence to tell you. So they don't. So yeah, ain't no vaccine apologists when it comes to the science, saying the science can only tell you what they have evidence of. Since they didn't have evidence of it, science said we don't know if it can stop transmission. Now, of course, the anti-vaxxers jump on that as if scientists was giving up something. Science just always just tells you the whole story. At this point, this is what we know. At this point, this is what we don't know. It's simple methodology. And science always delivers it like that. I gave you the example earlier. If you and I are in a study and I do something intentionally wrong, if it can't be peer reviewed, your information will be proven, mine will not. Because humans can make mistakes or be intentional. Like, where you getting science is still figuring it out as far as what though? Like, we got the information on, like say on vaccines. So what is we trying to figure out? Like, they told you exactly what the vaccine would do. That's why they're offering it. So what is it that we're figuring out that makes, where's the like I say, answer the questions that you may be skeptical about. Because right now there's a lot of answers that you can go look up what I'm telling you. Like, you definitely don't take my word. But like you can't stay in the questioning world as I would suggest, I can't say you can't, but I would suggest, as I said earlier in the video, don't stay questioning to the point where you don't go find the answer. What do you, like, if science proves something, why wouldn't it be a fact if it's proven? Yeah. Science is evidence. Science is evidence-based. There is no, like, science is, we can prove it or we can't. Right. Yeah, I know. Yeah. But science don't say that it knows either, right? So help me understand. So even though we got 16 other vaccines that we've taken in our lifetime that don't show any long-term effects, like, do you understand that that's why when we add another vaccine, but science still say, they can't tell you the long-term effects until there's been, 5-10 years, and they say, all right, this is what we found in 5 years. This is what we found in 10 years. So yeah, science can't tell you, but let me make this clear, Damon. I don't think a lot of people understand this. Every medicine that's rolled out on the market, there's no medicine that comes out that they know the long-term effects of. What do you mean they're saying it's developing? What are you talking about? I don't know what you mean. Who's saying? Oh, you say what you're saying is, no, I'm not saying that, Damon. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying it's developing. I'm saying science shows you exactly what it knows. It knows that in this situation, the vaccine, they knows that it won't cause hospitalization. They're studying to see if it's slowing down transmission, since they don't know it at this moment. Science is always going to keep studying something, even when they think they know. If you think about, like, this is the example I love to tell people is, we grew up learning there was 9 planets. The kids now learn that there are 8 planets. I'm just kind of saying science loves to, in a sense, correct itself, but I'm just saying, yeah. I'm saying, so like, what? Yeah, so that should be a good thing, right? When science will say, hey, we know that this, for example, in this situation, we know that the vaccine will stop death and severe hospitalization. Like, considering what this virus is doing, that's the best news you ever want to hear. And then, like I said, for the long-term effects, like, just understand every medicine that comes to the market, no medicine that comes to the market, you know the long-term effect until there's been a long-term. But I mean, we don't have a history of vaccines causing long-term problems. Like, we all got a bunch of vaccines, whether we want to admit it or not. So I don't anticipate, of all medicines, the vaccines, again, being the safest of all medicines, being the one that, I mean, when I say safest, I mean, I'm talking about even to the degree, I've said this on other videos, even to the degree that understand, like, they don't even recommend no remedy medicine that you take when you're healthy. But we get vaccines when we're completely healthy. We take supplements when we're completely healthy. They're less invasive than other medicines. Okay, yeah, let's talk about that. So again, I think by you asking that question, in my opinion, Damon, I think again, because I see people do this all the time, I think people misunderstand science as if it's suggesting that it's a belief. So yes, science was wrong, but in this situation, when you're talking about the plant, and as soon as science figured out it was wrong, it told you. If you believe something, you always believe it no matter what. Science is not a belief. Science just, what can it prove? And then what happened with, Pluto after, like I said, these are nerds that are just, I love scientists, but I'm just saying, like, the people that are curious enough to keep looking at Pluto long enough to be like, you know what, this ain't qualifying for a planet based on what we scientifically say a planet is. Pluto really ain't qualifying. And as soon as science has no problem saying, hey, this is what we know now. Like, so I'm saying, like that's why you, like, for you, I think you find it as a reason to distrust. Like, I love the fact that science didn't try to BS us once it knew something different. That's why I trust the methodology. That's what I'll keep explaining to you. You should never consider science as a belief. Science is evidence for what it can show. And when science doesn't know something, they keep testing, keep testing. Say, hey, here's what we know. And then at the moment that is wrong, it's usually because new information, like, it's a couple ways. A lot of times, as we get more technologically advanced, or as we get more advanced, now that we can do this, or a computer can now do this, we now can take this methodology with this new technology and now look at this. Before we didn't have the technology to look at this. Like DNA science is something that's super advanced that they didn't have in the 60s to the degree that we have now. So, yeah, no doubt, Pete. Yeah, Neil, that's one of my favorite dudes or whatever. But to try to equate methodology to a belief, they're opposites. There is no methodology to why we believe something. We usually believe it because we've been taught it over and over and over and over again, or whatever reason we choose to believe it. There's no methodology. Science is a repeatable process, and again, as soon as they say something is wrong, like, I don't know. Yeah, there's nothing's an exact science. Like, that's not even a real word. If you understand the methodology of science, which is, we're gonna test it, we gotta hop out, we're gonna observe it, we're gonna go test it, look at the evidence of the test, retest it, and then see if somebody else can run the same test to make sure we did our test right. That's the methodology at all times. Yeah, no doubt, Tamika. Like, I just don't think you. Yes, like science is definitely trial and error, but people are looking at that trial and error similar to when we believe something. That just don't go together. Like science doesn't run from the fact that they're always testing and improving. Like, but I'm just saying, if you just, but when science says the evidence is here, you go with that until somebody can prove something different. Ain't that hard? But to not go with it is a complete guessing game. And you have nothing to go, because if you don't have methodology to go against that, you don't have a method that you use to disagree with it. You just said, I don't fuck with it. Like, you just like, I don't mess with it. Like, you got no reasoning behind why you don't. You're just choosing not to. I don't know if that, like, that's what I'm saying. Science and beliefs are opposites. Damon, I mean, you keep running to this word facts. I've been using the word evidence because here's the evidence for why we know what we know. Like you, like it. I don't know. I just feel like you're stuck on like these extremes the way you're asking these questions. Because I haven't said none of those. That I've been saying when science knows what it knows, you can go look at the science and see if peers agree with this consensus. Because those cats that are nerdy enough to spend the time doing those studies, needing a peer to approve it before it becomes a relative consensus, like for something that they can scientifically study, that there's a methodology to, choosing to disagree with them. What are we using to choose to disagree with them? You see what I'm saying? Like we just have our own, like you don't have nothing to disagree with them with. Like now, like I said, when you have scientific fights all the time where they're trying to get the consensus. That's making sure some things are super intricate as far as having to use the methodology. And so, like my man Unc said, science is counterintuitive. So it's really always trying to disprove things. That's really what the methodology is doing. And so that's what makes the methodology foolproof, is because it's looking to disprove. If you understand. Yeah, there we go, Damon. Yeah, there we go. So, what happens is like the only thing the science would designate as a fact is if all tests have been ran to, and there's no more tests. There's no, like if you think about, you have hypothesis in science, is theories, then you get the next line is theory. But something is a fact is something that is nothing you can test again. Every test has been run and it can't be disputed. That's very few things, or like I mean, saying something like this table is a solid. Like there's no methodology to run to prove, this is, the stated form of this table, it's solid, we learn solids, water, and, what is it? Solids, liquids, and I'm tripping right now. But I'm just saying, like, we learned that in science, right? So I'm just saying is, like, this table is a solid. Like, there's no type of methodology we would use to disprove that this is a solid. It has to be something like that they're saying. There's no more tests. That's the only things that science would consider a fact. But like for example, E equals MC squared is the theory of relativity. It's called a theory for a reason. And like now science is so advanced, they're figuring out that theory of, I think I'm saying it right, theory of relativity, like it's not applying in certain places out in space. So, because science is, even though it's been used effectively to create, bombs and good nuclear energy in a good way, you use be good for evil, right? So the theory holds up in our realm, if that makes sense. So, but it still remains a theory, because unless it cannot be tested again, it will not be labeled a fact. Yeah, so that was it. Yeah, thank you. But yeah, Yeah. When science is saying here's the evidence, it's typically saying this is the most evidence that we got, and and when it's a risk versus reward thing, that's when something will be moved to put to the market. Like I say, every medicine that comes to market is a risk reward thing. Every medicine. Like I always like to give this example. Like if you think of like the most dangerous medicines that they have at the hospital that only, the surgeons can use or whatever. That people are fluid now. That's funny. The most dangerous medicines that they have at the hospital, right? That typically are used during, the surgeries and things of that nature, or whatever. The risk reward is, oh, okay, we don't really ever use these medicines. However, this person's life is at risk. And so we're going to give them this medicine now and deal with the side effects while we save their life. Once we save their life, wean them off the medicine. So it's only used at the point of the risk reward scenario being in the favor of using this highly addictive medicine, like happens in psychology and stuff. Doesn't mean that that individual human may not ever make an error with prescribing it to somebody. Because what they don't know is how addictive it will be for everybody to give it to, that kind of thing. You know what I mean, or whatever. But they're just using the case studies, whatever. Because at the end of the day, while every medicine carries a side effect, most people don't suffer those side effects. All of us have genetic makeups to where we could be the one who suffers the side effect. Like that, but it becomes the risk reward based on the condition that you may have in your body. So, it's not saying science can't make a mistake, not saying that, but I'm just saying to disregard science without some other methodology. I don't know how you get to do that, because you're guessing at the science, or at least saying, hey, at this point, based on these things, here's what we see. And I usually tell people, don't go by what the first scientists tell you, let it go through enough peer reviews and that, that kind of stuff, and, see what consensus are. I mean, there's been plenty of times, again, like I said, using the planet thing, eight, we're down got 8 planets. Like one of the, and everything I'm telling you, like, this is just, you can look this up. Like, it's all available in science. Like, science, don't be trying to tell people one way that, like, science ain't trying to make you believe nothing. It's just saying, here's what we can show you. Like, here's my favorite example, just to show you how the methodology works. My favorite example to show you how the methodology works is, like, this may sound crazy, but I think I may be a little off on the years, but I think as of like the 1930s or 40s, like they didn't sterilize surgeon tubes before the 30s or 40s. I might be wrong on the years or whatever, but let me see. How long after your second dose did you test positive? Yes, I did, Tamika. I tested positive on Monday. I got my dose back in February, but as I explained earlier in the video, I was in a trial, so it's possible that I was in the control group. But they don't tell you, when they don't tell the control group or the actual group if whether you actually got the real one or not. So I'm guessing, since I came down with it, that I might have been in the placebo group at this point. But so that's just trying to answer your question with that. But let me give this example. I'm definitely in the video with this. Again, it's just like scientific methodology is not about trust. You can look at the information and they'll tell you this is what we know or this is what we don't know. So it's like, what is there to trust? Oh, they don't know that yet? I trust that they don't know that yet. You feel me? Like with this vaccine, they know it won't cause hospital. Like they got the studies to say, hey, 100% against death and hospitalization, efficacy. When they ask them, will it stop the transmission? They don't got the study, so they say they don't know that yet. So I trust that they got the studies to prove the 100%, and I trust when they say they don't know if it stops immunity. But anyway, let me get this example, then I'm out this thing. So again, it's just to try to get people to understand that the methodology is not a thing of having to trust or not. You can look at it and see what it says. And 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 they'll tell you if it's a consensus versus, if it's not, that kind of stuff. But like, for example, sterilization. This is my last example. Again, I'm just trying to get people comfortable with, if you actually go look for the answers, you can find the answers. Don't stop at the question. Don't let the skepticism and the question alone make your decision. Ask these valid questions. Why was it so short for this time? You know what I'm saying? What is this what is it, RNA technology? You can go look at it. How did they do it so fast? You can go get the answer. Like, a lot of most people are asking the question and being skeptical at the question without going and looking it up. If you look it up and then you can look at it and be like, okay, you can say, I still don't believe it, I guess. But I'm just saying, at a minimum, go look at the answer. And if you just choose not to believe it, you're just making a choice. But the answers are out there. But anyway, here's my last example, just showing how, because nobody that's pushing science is talking about right or wrong. We're just talking about the evidence of what we can see now. Like, science, we're not pushing right or wrong like people who are pushing beliefs back to us, if you will. So, like, they used to sterilize surgeon tools. And the first scientist, like, I think it was a woman and a husband or something, but definitely a woman, to suggest that they needed to, because all the infections, that stuff that would be, this is obvious now, but at the time, believe it or not, they would just clean surgeon tools. They wouldn't sterilize them. And so the first scientists that started saying, hey, we need to, let me see what this says right here. I have diabetes and never had the flu shot until last year, and I've been sicker. I don't trust none of it. I respect that. So anyway, back to the example. So the first scientist that was offering, her peers was like, you're crazy. It's not necessary. Whatever. Like, they literally, the whole science world was like, crazy, not necessary. They've been, surgery has been happening way for a long time on humans, about the 1930s or whatever. And so all up here is like, you're crazy. Don't need to do that. Don't need to have a clean room. Don't need to sterilize. She keeps running her studies, keeps proving it, keeps pushing it. And another peer says, let me look at what she's talking about. So they go use the methodology. And a peer backs it up and says, oh, this looks like it is something that needs to be done. Most of the consensus is, hell no, not necessary. Like, it sounds crazy now because we do this stuff. But I'm just showing you how methodology works. So yes, science at the time is wrong in thinking that you don't need to sterilize surgical tools. So the consensus is wrong. The methodology, once it kept getting applied, proved the thought wrong. Because prior to that, nobody had studied sterilization till this doctor does her hypothesis and studies and prove that a lot of infections that were being caused from surgeries because of bad tools. But until nobody had explored that, they would just clean the tools. And when she first came out with it, they mostly rejected it, like in a major, major way. But the methodology, once others used it, science will prove what it can prove. It proved that tools needed to be sterilized. So that's what I'm talking about, trusting the methodology. So even when the consensus who are saying no and rejecting it just because that ain't what they do, they ain't did the study, they just talking shit because they don't believe she know what she's talking about. But once they do the methodology proves the consensus wrong. Science is what it can prove. And it will tell you what it don't know if you just go look at it. That's all I got, y'all. Enjoy the conversation. All right, let me see. They say it helps, but they lie. All right, Peppy. What evidence do you have that they've lied? That's what I would ask. I've been on this thing a long time, so I'm not going to keep it going. But I would just tell you that if you go figure out whether this virus or vaccine, which is worse? You will not find anywhere where a vaccine is proven to be worse than a virus. If you go try to look at something and not just go off of trust and belief, like the skepticism, I respect, but I just ask everybody take one step further and get an answer to the questions that you ask. It's cool that they can say that if one has gotten a vaccine, no one has been. All right, so let's not pretend that these causes of death. Let me see what you're saying here. It's cool that they can say that if one has gotten a vaccine, no one has been hospitalized, okay? Let's not pretend that these causes of death haven't been altered. So it's whether if someone had died directly related to the vaccine is another question. Why do you say no one wants to address it? Like, I don't get where you're getting that perspective at. Like, that's incorrect, Damon. Like, so yeah, that's very incorrect. I mean, I guess I'll read the rest of what you're saying, but I know what you just said is absolutely incorrect. You said whether someone has died directly related to the vaccine is another question. That's not true. Science absolutely is. They have a VAERS report. What happens? So they have to report everything, and the reason they report everything is so that everything, any death that happens after the vaccine, like those are like a lot of anti-vaxxers misuse that report, and like it's like 1,700 deaths have happened after the vaccine or whatever. And so the way the VAERS report is, the reason this is done, so you understand that I'm telling you, you're absolutely wrong about it. Nobody wants, like, that's not how science works. They are studying the reports so that if they find some type of trend, it could be studied to figure out. Like, for example, like, although vaccine deaths are very rare, like, they know right now, for the ones that have, there's this preconditioned immunization, some genetic disposition or immunization thing or whatever. Like, if they know somebody has that, those are the only people they have to watch for a potential death. And now science knows enough about it to catch it and stop it. The only reason they find out about it is because some people died and they all consistently had this precondition. Again, this is how science works. So they're super rare. So I'm saying this to you to say you're absolutely wrong when you say like you're saying a generalization that's not true to science. When you say no, let me see. I want to tell you what I'm saying, what you're absolutely wrong about. He says whether if someone has died directly related to the vaccine is another question that no one wants to address. False as hell. There's one death right now that's being studied to see if this person had that precondition, to see if he may be the one death. They're doing a study right now. Like, science don't do what you're talking about. Like this, like. In order, if something like that's why the epidemiologist stops one batch in California, because they were seeing higher side effects with just one batch. Like, science is just consistently working and studying and testing at all times. There is nobody wants to talk about it. The scientists ain't in our world like that. They're just studying and having to do their reports to know what's going on with the thing, to know if it's safe or not. They're doing that constantly. Like, they're not into politics. They nerds. Oh, yeah, let me see the last part. You said even if some small number can't tell it to someone. Yeah, I mean, you've been watching the whole video, Damon. You heard me say that if somebody even had a bad side effect, I would never tell them. So to say that now is disregarding what I said earlier about a bad side effect. So, of course, if somebody dies, I said that earlier. When people were dying, I don't understand your question. When people were dying, and when you say what do you mean by blamed it on COVID? Like, who? Like, y'all, like I said, are we still misunderstanding what science does? Like there's no pilot. Like, science only can show you what it can prove. So if science said it something, it is what it is. Like, I don't know, like, what you mean by they blamed it on COVID. When people were dying and they blamed it. I don't understand the question. What do you mean blamed it? Help me understand. Maybe repeat the question. Like, give me the question another way, Damon. He says when people were dying and they blamed it on COVID. I don't get how what blame it on COVID has to do with science. I don't get the concept of blame. Because, like, for example, I got a friend who worked in a hospital. I asked her about their process cause she's one of the people that would designate the cause of death or whatever. So I ended up, because I remember when the anti-vaxxers were putting out information that they were just labeling whatever, and I was like, oh, I'm interested in how that works. I had a friend in the field or whatever, and she was like, yeah, I would literally lose my job if I misdesignate one of these deaths. Okay, so let me clarify that, Damon. Yeah, that's not factual either. But again, that's how the anti-vaxxers have put that information out. So again, having talked to a friend and an immunization doctor who works in a hospital, so that's incorrect. That's the information you're saying now is anti-vaxxer bullshit. So what happens is the CDC. This is what the anti-vaxxers took and misconstrued, because they love to misconstrue shit. They could have told you the whole story because it was right there to read, but they leave out. They don't. So the anti-vaxxers only give you half the information. When you look at the science, the whole it's going to be the good and bad is going to be there. But the anti-vaxxers tell you one version, like what you're saying now. That's some anti-vaxxer bullshit that you've gotten that from. So what happens is the CDC publicly, was it back in April last year, publicly told the hospitals if someone has COVID in their body and they die, designate it as a COVID death. The anti-vaxxers took that and ran with it like, oh, they're inflating the numbers. So I go look at the CDC is right there, because they put it out publicly, so there ain't nothing they're trying to hide. And literally, it's at the time in March, and this I think it came out pretty early on, so I might be wrong on the year, but it came out. CDC publicly put this out to all the hospitals, right? And so the anti-vaxxers ran with it. See, they're designating the deaths. I literally went and read what they said. And so what it was, again, we're talking about at the time a brand new virus that they don't know a whole lot about at this point. So what the CDC was telling the hospitals is we need to study this disease. And so if somebody has COVID, and even if the cause of death has when they come in with COVID, but they end up dying of something else. So what happens is this ensured that the bodies would go to the medical examiner. So, like, for example, if I die of a natural death or whatever, at the hospital or whatever, I'll just go get sent to the morgue and y'all will bury me. If you get murdered and they don't know the cause of death, your body will get sent to the medical examiner. So what the CDC wanted for this brand new virus was to make sure that all people that had COVID in their body, because they needed to study and see exactly what this virus was doing, was to make sure it got sent to the medical examiner. And if you may recall this, so there was a lag between the deaths on the CD report and I forget what but the lag was the medical examiners actually designating what the death really was after studying it or whatever. Because you got to keep in mind at the time it's a new virus, and so while the cause of death could be something else, they don't know enough about the virus, so they need to, now that this person, unfortunately, because they didn't have no, we're talking about a brand new virus where they didn't have no recovery methods. This is all being learned on the spot. So we got to I want to put these things in context when that CDC edit came out, that the anti-vaxxers misused it the way they used it. So keep in mind the context of what was happening at the time. Like, they got remedies now, like telling me to be on isolation for 10 days and move it to 14 days. Like, a year ago, they didn't know. They was figuring all this shit out. So yeah, it was just so that the bodies would get to the medical examiner. Because here's another thing. What if whatever was the death that wouldn't have been designated as a COVID death, what if the virus had something to do with it? So if they don't send it to the medical examiner and they say, well, you died of this, there's a missed opportunity to learn about this new virus. So the thing was, anybody that had COVID in their body, make sure they go to the medical examiner so that we can study it. All right. Right. So yeah, let's talk about that. No, don't BS, Damon. I just told you what it was. The anti-vaxxers only told you a piece. I literally called my friend who does this at an immunization doctor who works in the hospital and just asked what's happening. This is available. But the anti-vaxxers will only tell you, they said designated deaths. It ain't no whole lot of people not knowing. Like, the people that's in the field can tell you exactly what happened. That's knowing. You know, you hearing it for the first time can seem like a whole bunch of people not knowing, but I didn't notice until I asked people in the field that do it. This is exactly what happened. No, there's no extra money for COVID deaths. The immunization doctor explained exactly how that worked. He said it's like $13,008, like if somebody got, put on that ventilator versus if it wasn't designated that or whatever. So the anti-vaxxers tell you about the 13.8 just to make it seem like they're giving people more money for their death. The doctor explained to me, he was like, all procedures, once we get a procedure, an amount, a common amount is scheduled on that for insurance purposes. But the way they come up with that number is all the treatments and all the equipment that will be used. And he was saying that in the case of this situation, there was different equipment, obviously, for this new virus at the time being brought in. So that was $13,800 that was being split 4 ways. Wasn't no extra money being made. I got that straight from a doctor in the hospital that explained the extra 13.8 that the anti-vaxxers tried to use to prove that they making this shit up. They give you the bullshit. The answers are there. Like if there's no figuring out the 13.8. I just explained how it worked. There's no figuring out that at the time they wanted to make sure the bodies went to the medical examiner, then the medical examiner give them the actual death. But if you get the anti-vaxxers tell you they're designating deaths that are not COVID as deaths, that sounds like bullshit. But it's because you're listening to the bullshit. That there is no bullshit if you actually go read the CDC. I only know because I read exactly what the CDC said they were doing. It ain't no bullshit if you read that. But it's bullshit if the people tell you it's bullshit and scare you. There is no bunch of figuring out. Like the people that's trying to intentionally make money. Anti-vaxxers make money. I'm talking about the ones that do this shit intentionally. They make a lot of money. That's why they do it. Like they add to the confusion because people run with just a piece of information. But I literally read exactly why the CDC did it. Because I was curious too. Again, I said the question itself is always fair. I was curious too. I'm like, why are they doing that? Why are they designating that, anybody with COVID? I'm like, why are they doing that? Oh, makes sense. I'm no longer confused. But if you don't know that, and you listen to the anti-vaxxers who are pushing fear, they don't. No, that's not the point. The information's there. You don't have to be in the not to know if you go look it up. It's not the confusion ain't no confusion. I mean, I've been walking through science with this situation. As they got more information, their information kept improving. And if they didn't know something, they said, now we know something. Like that's what you want science to do. Keep studying the methodology. So, come on, bro. I mean, real talk, man. Can't say they don't. It ain't no they don't know. Like the scientists don't care about the label. If somebody died because of this vaccine, they gonna tell you. Like I said, the reason they even know about that one condition that they have to look out for is because people, like I said, they're very rare deaths, but because they've happened, and the reason I know it is because science tell you, hey, we had this issue. Here's the record. So they take, like anything with science, they take it and improve on it. Like, okay, this situation happened. This was the issue. Like it tell you that. No, they don't. Science don't hide it. Because they're looking at it all the time. They have to. Like people that have you fearful make it seem like they ain't doing that. They always doing methodology, testing over and over. That's what they do. All right, man, I'm out. Holla at y'all.